right, Kenny. Thank you very much for your time. It's great to see you again.
Good to see you too, Hondo.
Awesome, awesome. So let's dive right into this, man. Because I'm really interested. It's been a while since we talked health and just the general wellness, but I'm really curious how you define holistic health. There's a lot of I think nowadays there's a lot of um, woo woo going around, right? And it's kind of sometimes the words get hijacked. And I'm really curious what your definition of holistic health is.
So my definition of holistic health would be just looking at the entire individual's mind and body and spirit, and how do you treat all that all at once. It's you're looking at exercise and eating right and taking time to be mindful of your spirits, and not, obviously holistic does imply certain herbal remedies, home remedies over just like Western medicine and big pharma.
Gotcha. There was let's dive into that a little bit more because for example, I think so we hear a lot about of these herbal remedies, and for example, just for some context for listeners, Kenny's coming to us from Maine, from the United States. That's where he's you're from Buffalo, but you're practicing in the United States, where there's a very kind of reactive medicine is very reactive, and it's very kind of like, okay, let's treat the ailment, let's try to treat the symptoms, and then maybe we'll figure the ailment, right? And then in Germany, in my context, it is the holistic movement has actually taken root for a lot longer here, and I know from experience where you'll go to the doctor or to the physician associate, and you'll they will prescribe not just like the medication, but they'll actually also say you want to take such and such a tea. You maybe want to do such and such of an go to the there's still like apothecaries here, and you can get that remedy, and so or remedies from them. And so what are you what exactly are do you have an example better of from your own practice?
Yeah. So, if someone is like, say they're getting, close to like being hypertensive or high blood pressure, I might recommend first exercise or like some supplements like beetroot powder or hawthorn berry, um, or Indian snake root is like another good one. Things of that nature. Of course, here, like, I'm not certified to like prescribe those things, so I always have to like put it like a little disclaimer in my notes, like, hey, like, I educated the patients to do their own research. Like, supplements can have side effects just like any other medicine,
Sure,
but that
sure,
would be
sure.
like a prime example. Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. And what have been like for have you seen you were talking when we started talking, and just over the years, I mean, Kenny and I, we met all the way back in undergrad. We've known each other, we've been friends for many years, well over 10 years now. And we both studied psychology, and we both kind of it was great it's always great to remember to start at first principles, I think, where you start as regardless of what people feel they are spiritually, you are walking around in a flesh bot, right?
Yes.
You're wearing a flesh machine, and you gotta that's something that you gotta you we sometimes very much forget. And also the culture kind of will emphasize performance, right? Performance and resilience, but sometimes at the expense of that health, right? And what you end up doing is sacrificing your long-term health for short-term gains, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Okay. And you mentioned what are some of the ailments that are really actually that might be quite common, that are preventable, with just something like a lifestyle change, something, or like a dietary change. Yeah, because again, that then translates into performance. It surely does.
Yeah, yeah. So there's actually a lot of things when you think about it. I think the most readily available Example would be diabetes, type 2 diabetes to be more specific. So, by definition, type 2 diabetes is typically adult onset. It's where just, for, decades, you've really just abused your body through poor diet, sedentary lifestyle, to the point where your pancreas, one of its main abilities is to produce insulin, and that ability begins to fail, and your body cells begin to fail to use the insulin that your pancreas is still making. And so that's a really prime example that you are really truly is preventable. If you people would just eat more, sounds overly simplistic, but it's true. If they would just eat more fresh produce, fruits and vegetables, more whole grains. As you know, here in the United States, because you lived here for a long time, fast food is a big thing. Everyone is
Right.
into that, and frozen meals and all that stuff. And it's just there's a mindset with a lot of people here where just they want an easy fix.
Yeah.
Just give me the pill, give me the insulin. I don't have the time or the money or the energy to just
Yeah.
take a little bit better care of myself and prevent these things from happening. But that
Yeah.
goes all the way into like other things as well. It just depends on how in depth you want to get with this. But like a lot of autoimmune stuff is preventable too, honestly. A lot of autoimmune stuff is just like your body um this reaction to just like chronic inflammation, really, just attacking
Okay.
itself. So
Is the chronic and the chronic inflammation can be directly uh correlated and caused by the diet?
absolutely.
Okay. Okay. That's it's interesting because there's also you might have been able to make the case, for example, like again in the speed at which life moves, right, is kind of like almost demands, right, that we try to look for shortcuts. It's very it's kind of it's just nuts, right?
Yeah,
But the speed at which life moves almost demands these shortcuts, and we find ourselves you could almost find yourself making the excuse, okay, well, it's much quicker to just grab a cheeseburger and continue to do my go about my everyday than it is to meal prep or something like this.
yeah,
But what's interesting though is that you can't even make that. At some point that might have made sense economically, but now you can't even make that sense economically because I don't know how it is in the States right now because it's been 6 7 years since I've been there, but over here McDonald's is expensive. Like it's
yeah,
cheaper to you can it's cheaper to go buy like a half a chicken
yeah,
and split that up over 2 or 3 days than it is to go and buy a meal, like a McDonald's meal. So it's no longer even economically viable.
yeah. That's true, Hondo. I would say it's not that much cheaper to like or cheaper at all, really, to like you said, get like a burger at McDonald's or Burger King or whatever else they got over here.
Yeah,
It's more just like a time thing. It's just as long as we're talking about healthcare, I think in large part like something that plays a huge role in it is just like you're seeing capitalism really fail like the health of people. Not to make things like too political, but it's true. People are
yeah,
working 60, 70 hours a week just to make ends meet, and so at the end of the day, time is money. Like, and these people, they're just like, I don't have the time, I'm just gonna do something quick and
sure.
cost short-term cost my wallet, long-term cost like my health, be damned, really.
Right, right, right. How do you feel about things that are so for example these like these finished almost uh shake meals, right? Like the meals where it's like, hey, just add 2 scoops and then it's like instant. I'm not going to name brands, but it's like add 2 scoops and like some hot water and then you've got like all your nutritions and like some noodles and stuff like this. And like what are your personal feelings on that?
Ooh, I honestly haven't thought too much about that, but just like initial thoughts on it, it's generally one of those things where I feel that if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Okay.
Um, I guess it would really depend on the brand, but I feel like a lot of them they're just going to be adding artificial sweeteners so that it doesn't taste disgusting, and
Okay.
those can be just as harmful, if not more harmful than real sugar.
Right.
So. that would
Right.
be initial thoughts on it. I'd really have to maybe do a little more research.
No, it's all good. All good. Excellent. Okay. And so um what have you seen from your within your patients that like have you seen examples in real life with your patients where I remember one specific example you mentioned years ago. Not sure if you remember, but you were basically you had a patient come back to you and say, "Hey, listen, I made this lifestyle change and my health just completely like had a 180." And I remember
Yeah.
that it was if you could tell us a bit more about that, because I remember when we spoke about it, that was very important to you because you started seeing finally someone caring about their body, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, that instance, it's sadly it's very far and few between things like that happen.
Mm.
I've had that
Wow.
happen a handful more times. But yeah, people come back in, and it's just like, it's like beating my head against a brick wall sometimes in
Sure.
primary care and family medicine, because to break someone's habits and their lifestyle is very difficult. And so some of these people, yeah, when they came in, I almost like cried happy tears because they're like, "Yeah, I feel so much better." Dr. Kenny, even though I'm a physician associate, sometimes they call me Dr. Kenny,
Yeah, sure. No, that's
and
cool.
they're like, "Yeah, I have so much more energy. I feel happier. I just like I hurt less, like my joints ache less,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just all these benefits.
Right, right, right. And so what are some of the things that you like? I want to learn. I want if you could go deep, just a bit deeper into maybe some of those patient things, because I'm interested in I'm really interested in performance and that place. But and then I'm not talking about like just like, oh, athletic performance. Like, no, it's
Yeah,
I'm interested in behavior, why people do what they do, why they sometimes act against their best interests, right?
yeah,
Even though something is clear, myself included, right? And there's nobody's innocent here, but I think I'm a huge proponent of awareness, and I'm consistently perplexed and amazed at why people act against their interests, and then what shift happens in their mind that causes them to do otherwise. So what do you think? Do you know? I know it's a very fast paced environment. You don't get a lot of time to speak with the patients, which is something we'll talk about as well. But what is something that you maybe perceived as being the click?
yeah. Well, I'm actually glad you asked this, Hondo, because I think part of this kind of comes down to our shared background of some neuropsychology. So, at its very core, I think these days, just with how little time we have, just that quick hit of dopamine of grabbing like that, nasty, greasy cheeseburger or like something sugary is just like, people are going for that quick hit of feel good over like,
Mm,
the long term benefit to themselves. The long term like serotonin and dopamine boost. They're going for it like I got, if they need it now, brain needs it
right,
now.
right. Right, right. And you know what's interesting is that it doesn't we spoke I mentioned earlier about how, okay, no longer, maybe at some point it made sense economically. However, it no longer makes sense economically.
Yeah,
And then moreover, though, it's also now a matter of actually calorically, because calorically those highly processed foods, they're very, very high, but they're not filling at all. Like if you
yeah,
have them, like you have a burger, again, guilty here. It's not
yeah,
it's not a staple of my it's not a staple of my diet, but every once, especially when I travel, maybe you need to grab a quick burger, and you realize that within an hour and a half, you're already hungry again.
yeah,
And so people don't even realize, okay, well, it doesn't make economic sense, it doesn't make nutritional sense.
yeah,
How much more nonsense does it have to make
yeah.
before people change their behavior?
Right.
And then still also expect, to have their body and their mind perform at optimal levels,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask a question. And we can go into as deep or not as much as you would like. You and I have both sustained injuries, in over the
Yes.
course of the year, of the course of our lives. And we were both, but we both place a premium on our fitness. Like, we try to stay reasonably fit. We go to the gym, exercise, and hike and stuff. And 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 sometimes I think people have that happen to them as well, and they're like, oh shit, like I was out of commission for almost 3 to 6 months, and I
Yeah.
couldn't, and I had to go all the way back down to the baby, 4 kilo dumbbells.
Yeah.
And that sucked, but I
Yeah.
had to. You have to do it. What are some of the strategies that you would recommend health wise for people that, like, let's say again, suddenly there's a strong an injury has not just a physical component, but there's also the psychological component, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to come to terms with, all right, well, I'm just not going to be able to hit the gym as much, and
Yeah.
even when I do, it's like I have to now switch things around. What are
Yeah.
some things that you have found in your own experience dealing with that?
Yeah, so I would say, it takes a certain amount of mental, really just mental and like psychic flexibility, as well as resiliency, because, for some people, myself included, like my own personal experience was like you know this, I was like a CrossFitter, for everyone
Yeah.
who's watching or listening out there eventually to this, yeah, go ahead and roll your eyes, but like that was part of my identity. That's how I stayed
Yeah.
in really great shape. And like for a while, it's just like it's like, oh man, like this isn't part of who I am anymore. It just, but I was like stubborn. I wanted
Right.
to do it, but I couldn't. And
Right.
so, what I would say is if you have an injury, whether you're going to get back to whatever caused the injury or not, the important thing is to, just really try to accept, like, okay, this really sucks, but I have to keep moving in some way or fashion, whether for me, I couldn't use stuff for about my elbows for a long time. So I had to get into more running and hiking, as you mentioned. Um, and really just adapt, and maybe this doesn't apply to everybody, but I mean, if you can, something like that happens to you. I'm finishing up like a 10 class package with a personal trainer right now. I don't actually know if I told you that yet, Hondo.
No, 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 you
But
didn't
he's
mention that, but that's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's helping me work around the elbow stuff, and just there's stuff you can do around any injury, whether it's short term or chronic, just to keep going and keep moving. And it's, as well as I do, it's so important to do that because it's very hard to recreate that habit if you've gotten away for it
Right.
for several months.
Right. Right, right. What tell us a little bit more about, like, so I love that you touch on that, on habits, because that's also, again, that's part of performance, right? That's part of
Yeah,
performance, it's part of neuroplasticity. Like, we have the age old, it's amazing to me that the conversation is still even brought up, but this whole uh conversation about, okay, well, when does the brain stop to develop, and when does the, male versus female brains and blah, it's like, actually, we were finding all of the neuroscience shows us that the brain is actually very plastic, even
yeah,
well into later in life. There are it's all the research shows us that things like learning languages, doing developing new skills, doing exercising different parts of your body, right? So going from
yeah,
something like calisthenics to, heavy weightlifting or swimming, or, stuff like this. All are across these these constant switches, um, engage the brain in such a way where it can continue to be resilient and mold, and shape and adapt.
yeah,
So it's interesting to me that that conversation is still even being had as to whether or not it can happen, because all the science says that it's there, but I mean, I guess it takes a little time for for people to catch up. But yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's it could be hard for people to accept those facts sometimes because they're so stuck in like their own little, routines and worlds, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me about your approach to I think we've built a nice bridge here. Tell me about your approach to mental health. Because for example, again, I always try to, whenever I'm slowly building this client list, I'm going into consulting in many in two particular areas, in personal sphere and in business sphere. And and depending on the situation, right? Uh sometimes people will come to you and ask you questions that I'm like, okay, well, this is more of a personal related question, motivational related question. It's not so much a business question. But I don't want to just you don't want to leave people hanging, right? And you
Yeah,
want to just
yeah,
kind of at
right.
least point them in the right direction. And so, like I said, I tried to start from these first principles. And so I've asked you in the past before, like, okay, well, what are some of the questions that you asked during like a patient history, right? Because you want to ask about things like, okay, well, what is your diet like? What is your daily routine like? What are you eating? Because that's like the baseline. But
Yeah,
then now having if we think about it, if we think about the baseline being achieved, and we think, like Maslow hierarchy, right? And the whole, like, once the foundation is set, people start to now look for, okay, how do I um how do I achieve higher and better states of mental health? And so I'm curious, what is your approach? It could be exactly like mine, but or maybe you have a more, a completely different take or nuance. But I'm curious as to what your approach to mental health is, from given your near decade now, years long experience.
yeah, yeah. Well, so in professional experience, a lot of times I'm passing that off to like a therapist or psychiatrist, but just like personally, I'm a big proponent of ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, and the main proponent of that is, yeah, it's like your thoughts that are sad or angry or frustrated, all these typically things we associate with negative thoughts, like, they're normal functions. They're just how our brain works. But, it focuses on just accepting those, but, you know, don't, you don't have to like commit yourself like to those thoughts. You don't have to necessarily attach yourself to those thoughts. Just like recognize them, kind of sit in them, and just be like, okay, like, what use can I get from this negative experience, these negative emotions? Um, and whether that's like through journaling, I know you're a big fan of that, or just introspection or reflection, just really making
Meditation for a lot of people, yeah.
meditation. Yeah, absolutely. um just sitting with those negative thoughts, seeing how they make you feel, like seeing, even how you feel physically from that, and just be like, okay, but that's just like, I don't have to, let these thoughts run my life because they're only thoughts. You
Yeah,
don't have to
yeah,
attach
yeah.
yourself to them.
It's interesting. There's an enormous amount of there's so much wisdom in that, but I think that
Yeah,
it's a function of time, right? It
yeah,
really is a function of time. I remember I was just watching, not too long ago. I was watching a piece on the neuroscience of plasticity, which is why it's so close to mind right now, and in
yeah,
particular how your the impulsive, I believe it's the like the midbrain, the impulse center of the brain, develops much sooner than the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, the impulse regulator, evolve or fin sorry develops a lot later in life. Usually starts to taper off by like your early 20s.
yep,
And it explains why teenagers are so, like, caught up in this existential angst, and they tend to take risks and all this jazz. um
exactly, yeah,
I think it's really really interesting to realize that, more it would be really wonderful if more meditation practice, thoughtfulness practice, you know, physical, practices that teach you how to engage your neurosystem
Yeah.
as a whole
Yeah.
were taught more, as opposed
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
kind of.
Or
Yeah,
mindfulness practices,
right,
I think was another word
right,
you're looking for. Yeah. Yeah.
right, exactly, because we are really much, we're more than the sum of the parts, right? It's truly, and I think that one of the things that I really like about our conversations, is that we really see, we have a lot of the same training, at least prior to, your then later medical training, but we have the same foundation, and that foundation is great to build on. But then you realize, wait a second, we're not so separate. Like, the body isn't so separate from the mind. We don't even really know. We don't really have a clear definition of what the mind is yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and instead of trying to nitpick and actually lose dimensionality, we can gain dimensionality if we just say, all right, well, it's a system, and a system is many different parts working
Yeah.
in cohesion.
Yep.
And in all likelihood, it's like, it all we know is that the closest thing that we know is that maybe the mind, our personalities, our identities, are a function, are a projection of that system functioning, usually when, hopefully when it's being well fed, when it exercises, when it
Yeah.
stays fit. That's kind of what's coming out. That's what the body, your mind, is what your body's projecting in a way onto the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I would 100% agree with that.
that's cool. That's cool. And I again, I encourage, I try to, I try to encourage and think about. I try to encourage people to think, when there's no concrete definition, then make one up. Like,
Yeah.
make one up, but it has to make sense to you, and it has to make you want to get up in the morning, and make you want to carpe those DMs.
Yeah.
Right? because
Yep.
because because otherwise it's like, if you outsource your part of the problem I'm seeing, I'm hearing, and I think this brings it together. Please interject, if you agree and with other thoughts. But part of what I think the way that brings it together is that if you look at it, the problem is outsourcing. If you outsource your health to the pharma companies, they're just going to put you on the next quick pill, and then the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. If you And that's not to say that there's no place for pharmacology. Clearly there are
Right.
some things. Clearly, you as a healthcare provider understand that, there are some things that cannot be cured with just a walk in the park.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's the big guns, right? Pharmaca drugs, exogenous drugs are the last resort. First resort is self-awareness, mind-body connection, mindfulness, meditation, diet. You can already see the list is it
Yeah.
goes on, right? And then the problem comes when you outsource your physical health to other people, or other entities. And
Yep.
then I think also when you outsource your mental and yeah, your mental health, to others. Don't look to others to we shouldn't be looking to others to define the world for us. We should be curious and try to, like, define the world for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree with you, not outsourcing your health, physically to big pharma. Now, obviously, for anyone watching, like there is a time and a place for that, as you
Of
said.
course.
Or I
Yeah.
wouldn't be doing what I do.
Right.
That would be just a giant, like,
Yeah.
uh, like double life that I'd be leading, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure. Yeah.
but yeah, also, the mind and body are very connected. And I feel that if you outsource, your happiness to other people, your body will start to fail. You'll feel fatigue from just like not generating like your own internal satisfaction and happiness for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. I think How would you a final or at least one of the final questions? How would you feel about, for example, what would you say to someone who is a, let's say again, a very performance, more traditionally performance oriented person,
Yeah,
and they're kind of like, all right, well, hey, listen, I'm some big shot person. I'm a business guy. I don't really have time I don't have time for meditating. I can really just, I have more than enough money, so I don't care how much the burger costs. Like, it's fast, and I don't know how to cook, and like someone who really just, okay, well, don't care about these other factors. However, they're kind of coming to you, and you can see, wait, listen, this person has some kind of a chronic, this person's lifestyle
yeah,
has a very chronically bad prognosis. What would
yeah.
you say to what would you say to someone like that, as a healthcare provider?
Oh, there's a saying that comes to mind. There's several. I remember from actually EMT classes. It's the whole play now and pay later, or pay
Uh,
now. Putting in the time,
yeah.
investing in your health, and play later as we get older, when typically most people are starting to get sick.
Right. Right.
Um, it's the whole make time now for your health, or your health will make you give it time later,
Yeah.
whether you want to or not. So,
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Fair. That's great. That's great. That's good.
yeah.
Kenny, yeah, I mean, this. Thank you so much for hopping on the call. It's been, I've learned a lot. I'm really happy that we had the time to have this conversation. Please come back. I
Likewise.
think
Yeah.
I can already think of several other conversations that I want to have with you. And see you next time.
See ya.